Okay, yeah, thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. Yeah, it's nice having us today again for our English class. And I believe that all that we have been teaching ourselves, in a way or two, we have been trying to put them to use. Now, the beautiful thing about the English language is that I tell my students that English is just like mathematics. If you don't apply the rules you are given in mathematics, it is possible you are not able to solve some questions as you are given. The same thing applies to your English language. If you are given some rules or you are taught something and you don't apply them to your day-to-day conversations, you realize that when questions come or when questions arise on those topics, you find yourself still fizzling in or trying to know if you actually understood how to go about the question or not. Now, I remember that when we started our class, we talked about part of speech, and from there, we moved on to the verb. And then the last time we discussed the verb, we talked about the auxiliary verbs, where we treated the non-modal auxiliary verbs and the modal auxiliary verbs. And I can remember that I told us about the non-modal auxiliary verbs, which I said that they are verbs that can be used anyhow, or we call them non-modal because they don't have any mode of operation. We can use them as auxiliaries, and at some point we can use them as lexical verbs. But for the modal auxiliary verbs, they have their own specific meaning. In any sentence you use them, they have their own meaning that they are adding to that sentence. Unlike for your non-modal verbs, where it is whatever you want them to do in that sentence that they do, they only assist. But for the modal auxiliary verbs, they have their own meaning and they affect either the tone or the tense of the verb of the sentence you're using them with. Pardon me. So, but today we want to look at another topic entirely, but still on verbs. We want to look at transitivity of the verbs. Transitivity of verbs. So I will call it, for transitivity, we have two types or two aspects of it. We have the transitive and intransitive verbs. Transitive and intransitive verbs. So now, anytime we are talking about verbs, I want you to know that there are some things that we look out for on them. One, it is only with verbs that you talk about tenses. Now,
hello.
Yes, sir?
Sorry, sir. Could you share your screen?
Okay. Okay. Let me I'll share the screen now. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Alice, so we are dealing with transitive.
Alice, could you mute yourself?
Yes.
Can I continue?
Yes.
Okay. I said we're talking about transitive and intransitive verbs. Now, anytime we are discussing verbs, basically we are looking at how actions are carried out in a sentence. What action was carried out by a subject or how the action was received by the object. So anytime we are talking about transitive and intransitive verbs, there are some things that we need to understand about them. If you talk about a transitive verb always will have a direct object. This is what I mean. For instance, I have a sentence as this. Pardon me. Tade kicks the ball. This is the sentence I want to use now. Tade kicks the ball. Now, for this sentence, Tade here will be my subject. I'll try to identify that with red. Kicks here will be my verb. I'll try to underline that. And the ball will be my object. I'll try to identify that with another color other than red. Now, in this particular sentence, we have three constituents. We have a noun, which is our actor, and which is the subject of the verb kicks. And then we have the recipient of the action kicks, that is the ball. So now, this will mean that in this particular sentence, this action kicks can directly have effect on the object that we are dealing with. This is what I'm trying to say. I am trying to say that this particular verb is working directly with this object, the ball. Sorry, let me use another shape that I know that can bring that to place. Okay, I can say this. Yeah, this is better now. This verb kicks is working with the object, the ball. Now, we can say that this particular verb here is a transitive verb. Why? Because it can easily transfer its action as carried out by the subject onto the object. Now, basically, anytime we are discussing transitive and intransitive verbs, we are looking at the direct acceptance or reception of action by the object used in that sentence. Now, if you have any sentence or you have a clause that does not have an object, or you realize that there is another word class or a part of speech separating your verb from your object, from sitting directly beside it, such a verb will mean an intransitive verb. Such a verb will mean an intransitive verb. This is what I'm trying to say. Take, for instance, I have a sentence as Tade left at noon. Tade left at noon. Now, if you examine this sentence very well, for me to use this sentence properly, I may not just say something like this. Tade left noon. Except I want to take noon as maybe a common noun or a proper noun. But understanding the type of noon we are talking about here, you tell me that this is afternoon. Let me put it that way. Tade left at noon or Tade left in the afternoon. Now, if I'm going to consider this second sentence as I have it here, but I'll take it as the first because I want to discuss the intransitive verb. Now, this would have been an object that I'll be using. But in this instance, this is not an object. This is an adverb. Beside my adverb, I have a preposition. So which means the verb that I've used here is not a transitive verb. It is an intransitive verb. Why? Because I do not have a direct object as this beside it. I do not have a direct object as this beside it. Now, this is a preposition and this is an adverb. So I want us to pay attention to those things. by the time we are writing some sentences, we must know the type of verb we are using in them. We must be able to identify if they are transitive verbs or intransitive verbs. Sometimes we may write a sentence that has an indirect object after a preposition. I want you to know that that object after a preposition leaves the verb as an intransitive verb. Or better still, if I have a kind of clause that does not have an object after the verb, we call that type of verb used in that clause or in that sentence an intransitive verb. For instance, if I write, the lion sleeps. The lion sleeps. Now, this is a clause. This will be my subject. This will be my subject, and this will be my verb. Just as I said earlier, I said if you have a clause or a sentence that does not require an object in it, the verb used in that sentence is an intransitive verb. If I want to rewrite this sentence, or maybe I want to do something on it, I may put something like this. The lion sleeps on a mat. Now, grammatically, I can tell you that I have a subject, a verb, and an object in this second sentence. I have a subject, a verb, and an object in this second sentence. But one thing is that between my verb, this is my verb, sleeps, and my object, there is something removing the connection that would have come to them like this. Here I have my subject, I have my verb, and I have my object directly after it. But in this situation, I have my subject, this, I have my verb. Now, at this point, there is something that is coming in between my subject and my supposed object. This would have been my supposed object. Now, grammatically, this is an object because the lion is carrying out this action on this thing, this noun. Now, but because I have another word class in between, it is not giving this particular verb a direct interaction on the noun. So which means because of this particular word class, it is leaving this verb as an intransitive verb. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some questions, I'm going to get some sentences for us, and then we'll analyze and pick them as transitive or intransitive verb. Let me just get into my archive and then I bring out some questions for us. Okay, yeah. All right, these are the sentences that we're going to work with. These are the sentences that we're going to work with. Now, the first sentence, I like all of Katy Perry's songs. I like all of Katy Perry's song. Now, I will tell you that this is our verb and this is our object. And this is our subject. Now, If I want to analyze this sentence, the verb that I have here is a transitive verb. Why? Because it has a direct connection with my object. For you to know that I want to identify this verb as a transitive verb, I can remove some of this. If I delete this, the meaning of that sentence is still in a way retained. So I like Katy Perry's song, or I can go further to say I remove this and I can say I like songs. You realize that after removing all of those things, I still have a direct interaction between my verb and my object. So which means this particular verb used here is a transitive verb. So this is a transitive verb. Now, for the second one, New Delhi is the capital of India. New Delhi is the capital of India. Now, this is the verb that I have there. Because there is a direct connection between my subjects here and these objects here. Now, grammatically, I may not call this an object. I will call it a complement because I have the verb to be in it. But for the sake of this topic, we'll just take it as an object and we'll let it be. So because I have a direct object beside my verb, this also will be a transitive verb. A transitive verb. Now, the third sentence now. Billie Eilish is a singer. Billie Eilish is a singer. Now, this will be my subject. This will be my verb. And this will be my object. Normally, it would have been a complement, just as I said for this end, but we'll take it as an object because of this class. So this will be my object. So the verb used in here is also a transitive verb. Now, let's look at this fourth sentence. Will builds a dollhouse for his 8-year-old daughter. Will builds a dollhouse for his 8-year-old daughter. Will is my subject. Builds is my verb. And a doll is my object. Now, all of these are still parts of my object. But I just want to use a part of it to represent what I want to call my object. So a dollhouse for is whatsoever, all of these will be my object. So will is my subject, builds is my verb, and a dollhouse for his 8-year-old daughter will be my what? My object. So the type of verb used here is also what? A transitive verb. Now coming to the last sentence on transitive and intransitive verb, we have I as my subject. I have 8 as my verb, and I have a sandwich for breakfast as my object. So now, because I have a direct movement or a direct connection between my verb and my object, the verb used in this sentence is also a transitive verb. It is also a transitive verb. So before I proceed to some questions on non-transitive or intransitive, does any one of us have a question there? Anybody with a question? Okay, so let's proceed. If there is no question, let us proceed. Now, I'll try to form some sentences, and together we'll try as much as possible to identify the verbs that we have in it, either as a transitive or an intransitive verb. But basically, all the sentences that I want to give us now, will be verbs that are intransitive as used in them. For instance, I will say, I will go for a walk. I will go for a walk. Now, I have two verbs here, and then I will work on both of them. Now, the tense of this verb is the future or in the progressive. So this will be my verb. This will be my subject. And because here, in between my verb here and what would have been my object, there is something there. This preposition, it has made this verb here an intransitive verb. It has made it an intransitive verb. So pay attention to those things. If you have a sentence with a subject, a verb, and you realize that in between your verb and your object, there is a particular word class, most especially your pronoun. It is pronoun that work most with having a verb to dictate if it's a transitive verb or an intransitive verb. So if you realize that in between your object and your verb, there has been something separating the direct connection, the verb used in that sentence will be an intransitive verb. I'll give us another instance. He placed him on trial. Now, I want you to know that here I have my subject, here I have my verb, here I have a direct object. So which means for the verb that I've used in this sentence below, it will be what? A transitive verb. Why? Because between my verb and my object, there is what? A direct connection. There is nothing separating them, unlike when I have my verb here, and then I have something separating the verb from the what? From the object here. So that is how you differentiate a transitive verb from an intransitive verb. Remember, your transitive verb will always have a direct connection to your object. You have a subject acting on the verb or carrying out the action, and then you have an object receiving the action if the verb is a transitive verb. But if you realize that when you have another word class, or in a way, there is what you call your supposed object is giving you another word class. For instance, you would tell me that this is a prepositional phrase. So all you need to know about transitive and intransitive verb is that for your transitive verb, there will be an SVO structure for your sentence, SVO. Your S here is your subject. Your verb is this. So I'll try to identify them. This will be our verb, and this will be our what? Our verb. And for our objects, let me try to change the color so that we can identify it easily. And this will be our what? Our object. So if you have something of this structure, either simple, complex, or compound, the verb that you have used in there is a transitive verb. But you will agree with me that for this will be an SVA structure. What do I mean by that? I have a subject, a verb, and an adverbial, or what we call an adjunct. Why? Because this is my subject. This is my verb. And this will be a prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase. And anytime we have a prepositional phrase in a sentence, we represent it with either an adverbial or we call it an adjunct. So anytime you have a structure other than SVO, the verb that is used in that sentence automatically is an intransitive verb. So without wasting our time, I believe you can differentiate between a transitive verb and an intransitive verb anytime you use them in sentences. Remember, for a transitive verb, there must always be a direct connection between your verb and your object. And for your intransitive verb, there will be something that nullifies your object or makes it another word class other than the noun or pronoun. This here is an adverbial or an adjunct. So it is not a noun or a pronoun such that it will make this verb that we have here an intransitive verb instead of having it as a transitive verb. But for the second sentence that we have here, you have a verb and you have your object sitting beside it directly. So this makes this verb that we have used here as a transitive verb, while the first one that we have used is an intransitive verb. So what I'll do now is that I'll get some questions for us that we'll take as our assignment, and then we work on those. Sentence number one. Sentence number one. Bola gave me a pen. Sentence number two. We brought him on after the break. Sentence number three. We called him a leader. Fourth sentence. The dog barked at us. Fifth sentence, we rode on a horse at the beach. Sixth sentence, give me your book. Seventh sentence, don't call in until I ask you to. Eighth sentence, let's pray for him. Ninth sentence, call me when you are ready. And the 10th sentence, praise God. So these are the sentences you will work on as your assignment. And then I will expect that the next time we are meeting, you submit your assignments to the coordinator, or you find a way to get the assignments across to me so that I can know if we understand what we have taught in this class. For a quick recap, we discussed transitive and intransitive verb. Now, the first sentence that we have here, we said for a transitive verb, there will be a direct connection, or you have your object sitting by side to your verb. Now, this is our verb here, and this is our object here. So, because you have the object directly beside the verb, this verb is a transitive verb. And also, another thing I want you to know is that for you to identify a transitive verb, what you have as the object will always be a noun or a pronoun. A noun or a pronoun. A noun or a pronoun. So, but if we look at this sentence here, the second sentence, what we have here is an adverb of time. So because this is not a noun or a pronoun, it makes this verb an intransitive verb. It makes it an intransitive verb. So further on it, if you have a sentence or a clause that does not have an object, automatically the verb used in that sentence is an intransitive verb. What we may also want to understand about transitive and intransitive verb is that for transitive verbs, they are acted upon by the subject. They are acted upon by the subject. But for intransitive verb, you realize that the verb it's becoming independent on its own, though it is acted upon. You realize that there is no other thing receiving the action from the subject. For instance, look at it. Sade has done something. What has he done? He has kicked something. What has he kicked? A ball. Now, this action kicks here has been received by something that is what? The ball. But when we got here, we realized that this action was not received by anything. It was just like something that was acted upon, and then it existed independently within its space. But for this one, we have somebody carrying out an action, which is this action, and then something receiving the action that has been carried out by someone. So that is basically how you identify a transitive verb from an intransitive verb. And to further buttress that, I said that Another way for you to identify a transitive verb from an intransitive verb is that for your transitive verbs, this structure of your sentence will have the subject, the verb, and the object format, just as we have it here. We have the subject, the verb, and the object format with these words representing each of the constituent. This is our subject, this is our verb, and this is our object. But for the first one, what we have here is a subject, verb, and adverbial constituent. This is our subject, this is our verb, and this is our adverbial, because what you have here is a prepositional phrase. So that is how you identify a transitive verb from an intransitive verb. Or better said, that is how you can differentiate an intransitive verb from a transitive verb. So don't forget, these are your assignments. Make sure you work on them. Try to go through all we have discussed and make sure you understand before you jump at answering the questions. Remember, for your transitive verb, there will always be a noun or a pronoun beside your verb. And for your intransitive, you will not have a noun or a pronoun beside your verb. So thank you very much for tonight. Have a wonderful night rest. So we'll meet next week as we continue on other aspects of, okay, Silas is raising the hand. Silas, can we have your question quickly?
Please repeat the last one you just said about transitive.
Intransitive verb, is that what you mean?
No, you said verb is always a noun or a pronoun.
I said